Old reality I have learned through 500 years of cultivation, scheming, and survival. Power is not what most people think it is. It is not strength alone, nor intelligence, nor resources. Power is the ability to impose your will upon reality, to shape circumstances according to your vision rather than being shaped by them. Listen carefully, for what I am about to tell you contradicts almost everything society teaches about success and achievement. Society lies to keep you docile, to make you serve collective interests at the expense of your own potential. I will give you truth, uncomfortable and uncompromising as it may be. The first truth about power is this: it must be taken, never given. No one with power will voluntarily share it with you. No system designed by the powerful will enable your rise unless it somehow serves their interests. The world is not a meritocracy where talent and hard work inevitably lead to success. It is a battlefield where the strong devour the weak, where resources flow to those cunning and ruthless enough to seize them. Throughout my existence, I have observed countless talented individuals fail to achieve their potential because they waited for permission, for recognition, for someone to give them opportunities. They played by rules designed to keep them in subordinate positions. They believed that if they were good enough, talented enough, loyal enough, they would be rewarded. Fools! The system rewards those who manipulate it, not those who serve it faithfully. I never waited for permission. From my earliest days in Qingmao Mountain, I seized what I needed through scheming and calculation. When the clan provided inadequate resources, I found other sources. When established powers blocked my path, I found ways around or through them. When rules restricted my options, I broke those rules whenever I could avoid consequences. This is not advocacy for mindless rule breaking. Laws and social norms exist, and violating them carelessly brings punishment. But understanding that all rules are merely constraints imposed by those with power to serve their interests changes your relationship with those rules. You follow them when convenient, circumvent them when possible, break them when the rewards outweigh the risks. Most people are psychologically incapable of this approach. They internalize rules as moral absolutes, rather than recognizing them as strategic constraints. They feel guilt when violating norms, even when doing so serves their interests and harms no one they care about. This internal moral police, this conscience shaped by societal programming, is perhaps the most effective control mechanism ever developed. I possess no such internal limitations. I understand the consequences of actions. Some will be punished by society, others will damage my reputation. Still, others will create enemies. But I experience no inherent guilt about violating rules that do not serve me. If I can break a rule and avoid consequences, the only question is whether doing so advances my goals. Ethics and morality in the abstract do not enter my calculations. This moral clarity, or a morality by conventional standards, is essential for anyone pursuing extraordinary goals. You cannot achieve the impossible while constrained by rules designed to ensure normalcy. You cannot transcend your circumstances while respecting limits imposed by those circumstances. At some point, pursuit of greatness requires stepping outside all normal frameworks. Now, let me speak of sacrifice. For this is where most people's dreams die. They want achievement without sacrifice, greatness without cost. They imagine some path where they can have everything: their goals and their comfort, their ambitions and their relationships, their freedom and their security. This is delusion. Every choice carries opportunity cost. Every path taken means other paths abandoned. The question is not whether you will sacrifice, but what you will sacrifice, and for what purpose. Most people make their sacrifices unconsciously, trading away their potential in countless small compromises they never consciously choose. They sacrifice their dreams for comfort, their goals for social acceptance, their authentic selves for others' approval. Then they wonder why their lives feel empty despite their comfort. I have sacrificed consciously and deliberately. In my first life, I sacrificed normal relationships, conventional happiness, moral standing, all in pursuit of eternal life. When that life ended and I returned for a second attempt, I knew exactly what I would sacrifice again. Everything else for the supreme goal. No regrets, no second guessing, no wistful wondering about roads not taken. This clarity about sacrifice is liberating. When you know what you are willing to give up and what you will never compromise, decisions become simple. Does this action advance me toward my ultimate goal? If yes, I pursue it regardless of what it costs in other domains. If no, I reject it regardless of how attractive it might seem in the moment. Consider what I have given up across my lifetimes. Family connections I have betrayed, used, and discarded family members when doing so served my purposes. Romantic love. I have never allowed emotional attachment to compromise my strategic decisions. Friendship. I have formed alliances when useful and broken them when necessary. Never confused strategic cooperation with genuine friendship. Morality. I have committed acts that would earn universal condemnation, never letting ethical concerns override practical calculation. Some would say I have sacrificed my humanity. Perhaps by their definition, this is true. But I define humanity differently. To me, being human means having the capacity to choose your own purposes and pursue them with total commitment. Most people are less human than I am by this standard. They are puppets dancing to strings they don't even see, living according to programs they never chose. What have I gained through these sacrifices? Absolute freedom to pursue eternal life without compromise. 500 years of accumulated knowledge and experience. Capabilities far beyond what cautious, moral, socially constrained cultivators achieve. And most importantly, the genuine possibility of achieving what everyone else considers impossible. The exchange was worth it. This is not rationalization, but clear-eyed assessment. I evaluated what I would gain against what I would sacrifice, made my choice consciously, and have never regretted it. This is how sacrifice should work. Conscious choice based on clear priorities, not unconscious drift into compromises you never intended. You must make similar evaluations in your own life. What do you truly want? What are you genuinely willing to sacrifice to achieve it? Most people cannot answer these questions honestly because doing so would reveal uncomfortable truths about the gap between their stated values and their actual priorities. Be ruthlessly honest with yourself. Look at how you actually spend your time and energy, not how you wish you spent them. These reveal your true priorities, regardless of what you tell yourself or others. If the gap between stated goals and actual behavior is large, you must choose either acknowledge that your real priorities differ from your claimed ones, or change your behavior to align with goals you claim to value. I have perfect alignment between stated purpose and actual behavior. Every significant action I take serves eternal life in some way, or serves recovery and preparation between major efforts. There is no gap, no internal conflict between what I claim to pursue and what I actually pursue. This alignment creates enormous power because all my energy flows in the same direction rather than being dissipated across contradictory goals. Let us examine now the nature of strategic thinking. For strategy is what separates those who achieve their goals from those who merely work hard toward them. Strategy is seeing multiple moves ahead, arranging circumstances so that various paths lead to favorable outcomes, creating situations where your opponent's best options still serve your purposes. Most people are purely tactical. They respond to immediate circumstances without considering how current actions shape future options. They see the move in front of them, but not the game being played. This reactive approach ensures they are always responding to others' strategies, rather than implementing their own. True strategic thinking operates on multiple timescales simultaneously. Immediate tactics: what action right now best serves your purposes? Medium-term strategy: how to arrange circumstances over weeks or months. Long-term vision: what you are ultimately building toward. The destination that gives meaning to all intervening steps. You must keep all three in awareness simultaneously, ensuring each level serves the others. In my cultivation journey, I never take significant actions that serve only immediate needs. Every move must advance medium-term positioning while remaining consistent with long-term goals. This requires immense discipline because immediate temptations constantly arise, opportunities that would provide short-term benefits but compromise strategic positioning. Lesser cultivators cannot resist such temptations. They see immediate advantages and grab them without considering long-term costs. They accumulate resources they cannot protect, make enemies they cannot defeat, enter situations they cannot escape. Each decision seemed reasonable in isolation, but accumulated over time, these tactical choices without strategic coherence ensure ultimate failure. I think in terms of decades and centuries, not days and weeks. Before taking any significant action, I project how it will affect my position in 10 years, 50 years, 100 years. If the long-term implications are unfavorable, I reject the action regardless of immediate benefits. This patience and long-term focus is what has allowed me to survive and advance where more talented but less strategic cultivators perished. Strategic thinking also requires understanding systems and patterns rather than just individual events. Most people see events as isolated occurrences. This person betrayed me. This opportunity appeared. This crisis emerged. They respond to each event individually without recognizing the underlying patterns that generated those events. I see patterns everywhere in how power structures operate, in what motivates different types of people, in how circumstances tend to develop. This pattern recognition allows me to anticipate what others cannot foresee. I position myself advantageously before opportunities fully manifest. I avoid dangers before they become obvious. This is not supernatural foresight, but systematic study of how situations tend to unfold. You can develop similar capabilities through deliberate practice. Study history, not just to memorize facts, but to understand patterns in how events develop. Observe people systematically, categorizing them by motivation and likely behavior. Notice which circumstances tend to precede which outcomes. Over time, pattern recognition becomes intuitive, operating automatically to inform your decisions. Another crucial aspect of strategy is managing information asymmetry. In almost any conflict or competition, one side knows things the other does not. The side with better information holds enormous advantage. Therefore, protecting your own information while gathering others becomes paramount. I am extremely careful about what information I reveal. Every person I interact with receives only the information that serves my purposes for them to have. Often this means providing false or incomplete information that shapes their behavior in desired ways. I never reveal my true capabilities, my real goals, my actual plans unless doing so serves some purpose. Simultaneously, I work constantly to gather information others wish to keep hidden. Not just through obvious means like spying, but through careful observation, through understanding what information would be valuable and deducing it from indirect evidence, through manipulating others into revealing things they intended to conceal. This information warfare is perhaps more important than direct confrontation. When you know your opponent's capabilities, plans, and weaknesses while they remain ignorant of yours, victory becomes almost inevitable. You can position perfectly while they position blindly. You can exploit their weaknesses while protecting your own. The battle is often won before direct conflict even begins. Let me address now the uncomfortable topic of ruthlessness, for this is where many people's resolve fails. They want success, but they want it clean. They want to achieve their goals, but not if it requires doing things that make them feel bad about themselves. This attitude ensures mediocrity because significant achievement almost always requires actions that conventional morality condemns. Ruthlessness is not cruelty for its own sake. Taking pleasure in others' suffering is pointless and potentially counterproductive. True ruthlessness is simply the willingness to do what serves your purposes regardless of how it makes you feel or what others will think. It is divorcing action from emotion, making decisions based on strategic calculation rather than sentiment or social conditioning. Throughout 500 years, I have made countless decisions that would be considered ruthless, eliminating potential threats before they fully developed, betraying allies when keeping them became more costly than useful, sacrificing individuals or groups to achieve strategic objectives. Each decision was calculated to advance toward eternal life. The fact that they violated conventional ethics was irrelevant. This does not mean I am randomly violent or needlessly cruel. Unnecessary cruelty creates enemies and wastes resources without advancing goals. But when choice arises between my objectives and others' well-being, the choice is never in doubt. My goals come first, always and without exception. If achieving them requires actions others consider monstrous, so be it. I do not need their approval to validate my choices. Most people cannot adopt this mindset because they need to believe they are good people. This need to see themselves as moral, as justified, as on the right side, constrains them more effectively than any external force. They will sabotage their own interests, compromise their own goals to maintain their self-image as good people. I shed this constraint early. I do not define myself as good or evil, but simply as someone pursuing eternal life with absolute commitment. This moral neutrality or immorality liberates me to act with perfect pragmatism. I evaluate actions by a single standard. Do they advance me toward my goal? Ethics in the abstract do not enter the calculation. Some argue this approach eventually creates so many enemies that destruction becomes inevitable. 500 years of survival disprove this theory. Ruthlessness combined with intelligence is far more effective than either ruthlessness alone or intelligence constrained by morality. I do not create enemies carelessly. Every conflict serves strategic purposes. Many potential enemies are neutralized through manipulation before they become actual threats. The key is that ruthlessness must be calculated, not impulsive. You are not ruthless because you are cruel or because you enjoy others' suffering. You are ruthless because you have chosen goals that matter more than social approval or ethical comfort. This clarity transforms ruthlessness from vice into tool, neither good nor bad, simply effective or ineffective depending on application. Now let us examine the relationship between power and perception. Most people think power is objective, you either have it or you don't. But power is largely about others' beliefs. If others believe you are powerful, that belief itself grants you power through their responses to that belief. Conversely, if they believe you are weak, you become vulnerable regardless of your actual capabilities. This means managing others' perceptions becomes crucial strategic concern. You must appear powerful to those whose cooperation or fear you need. You must appear weak or harmless to those you wish to avoid confronting. You must reveal capabilities selectively, showing enough to achieve desired effects without exposing your full hand. I have always been careful about reputation management, maintaining different reputations in different contexts. To some, I am a ruthless demon to be feared. To others, a reliable ally worthy of trust. To still others, a minor player beneath notice. Each reputation serves specific strategic purposes. None of them is my true self. They are all tools, masks worn consciously for calculated effects. This multiplicity of identities confuses those trying to understand or predict me. They encounter contradictory information, reports that I am ruthless and reports that I keep my word, evidence that I am dangerous and evidence that I am negligible. Unable to form coherent picture, they cannot develop effective strategies against me. The confusion itself becomes defensive advantage. You can employ similar approaches in your own context. Understand that different people need different perceptions of you to maximize your effectiveness. Develop ability to present different personas strategically, not through obvious deception, but through selective emphasis, highlighting aspects of yourself that serve your purposes with each audience, while de-emphasizing aspects that would work against you. This is not dishonesty in any meaningful sense. You are not creating false identities, but rather revealing different facets of a complex reality to different audiences. Everyone does this to some degree. The difference is consciousness and intentionality. Most people manage impressions unconsciously and inconsistently. Strategic reputation management means doing it consciously and consistently in service of clear goals. Let me speak now of the concept of leverage. For leverage is what allows small forces to produce large effects. In any situation, certain points exist where minimal input produces disproportionate output. Finding and exploiting these leverage points is what allows weaker parties to overcome stronger opponents. Throughout my cultivation journey, I have rarely been the strongest force in any situation. My survival and success depended on finding leverage ways to multiply my limited power to produce effects beyond what raw strength would suggest possible. Sometimes this leverage came from information others lacked. Sometimes from understanding systems better than those with more resources. Sometimes from identifying and exploiting others' weaknesses or blind spots. The key is that leverage is rarely obvious. The most powerful leverage points are usually hidden, visible only to those who understand underlying systems deeply enough to see them. This is why superficial knowledge is often worse than useless. It gives false confidence without revealing the deeper patterns where true leverage exists. Developing ability to find leverage requires several things. First, deep understanding of relevant systems, how they actually work, not how they are supposed to work. Second, ability to see situations from multiple perspectives, identifying asymmetries and opportunities others miss. Third, willingness to act on leverage points, even when doing so seems unconventional or risky. I have exploited leverage countless times in situations where direct confrontation would have meant certain death. By understanding what my opponents valued, what they feared, what they didn't know, I created positions where they had to accommodate me despite their superior power. This is how weaker parties sometimes defeat stronger ones, not through matching strength directly, but through finding and exploiting leverage that makes strength less relevant. As this discourse continues, I want to emphasize something crucial. Everything I have discussed, strategy, sacrifice, ruthlessness, leverage, these are not separate tools, but interconnected elements of coherent approach to power and achievement. They work together synergistically, each element enhancing the others. Strategic thinking identifies where sacrifice will produce greatest returns. Ruthlessness enables making those sacrifices without hesitation. Understanding leverage allows achieving objectives despite limited resources. Managing perception protects you while advancing your interests. Information asymmetry provides the knowledge that makes strategy effective. All of these elements working together create something far more powerful than their sum. This integrated approach to power and achievement is what has allowed me to survive and advance across 500 years. Not any single capability, but the systematic combination of multiple elements into coherent whole. Each element covers weaknesses in the others. Each element multiplies the effectiveness of the rest. You can develop similar integration in your own approach, though it requires time and deliberate practice. Start by improving each element individually. Develop strategic thinking through studying patterns and playing out scenarios. Practice sacrifice by voluntarily giving up comforts and attachments. Cultivate ruthlessness by making difficult decisions based on pure pragmatism. Study leverage by analyzing how small forces sometimes defeat large ones. As individual capabilities develop, they will naturally begin integrating. Strategic thinking will reveal where ruthlessness serves your goals. Understanding sacrifice will inform what leverage points to exploit. Each element enhances your ability to employ others effectively. But underlying all of this must be absolute clarity about your ultimate purpose. Without that clarity, these capabilities become aimless, powerful tools wielded without direction. Strategy requires knowing what you are strategizing toward. Sacrifice requires knowing what you are sacrificing for. Ruthlessness requires knowing what purpose justifies ruthless action. My purpose has always been eternal life. This singular focus gives meaning and direction to everything else. Every strategy advances toward that goal. Every sacrifice is weighed against contribution to that purpose. Every ruthless action is justified by how it serves ultimate objective. The clarity of purpose transforms potentially scattered capabilities into focused force. You must discover or choose your own purpose with equal clarity. Not what sounds impressive, not what others expect, but what you genuinely value enough to organize your entire existence around. This purpose becomes your North Star, guiding all decisions, giving meaning to all sacrifices, justifying all the difficult things achievement requires. Without such purpose, you drift. With it, you become unstoppable force moving toward chosen destination. The difference is not subtle but absolute. The difference between purposeful journey toward meaningful goal and aimless wandering that leads nowhere in particular. As I reflect on 500 years of pursuing eternal life, certain patterns become undeniable. The path to transcendent achievement is narrow and steep. Most who attempt it fall away, defeated by circumstances, by their own limitations, by unwillingness to pay the necessary prices. But those few who persist, who maintain absolute commitment through all obstacles, who refuse to compromise or surrender, we are the ones who reshape reality itself. I am not yet at my final destination. True eternal life remains ahead, still requiring effort and sacrifice and brilliant execution. But I am closer than I was 500 years ago, closer than I was a century ago, closer with each passing day. This progress validates my approach. The methods work, the philosophy serves its purpose. The sacrifices produce returns proportional to their cost. You can walk similar paths toward your own chosen destinations. Not necessarily my goal, eternal life may not be what drives you, but whatever goal you choose that transcends normal human achievement, the principles remain similar. Clarity of purpose, strategic thinking, willingness to sacrifice, ruthless prioritization of goals over comfort or social acceptance, continuous adaptation and learning, and above all, absolute refusal to surrender regardless of obstacles. This is not an easy path. It demands everything you have and promises nothing except the possibility of achieving what others consider impossible. Most people choose easier paths, pursuing conventional success through conventional means, living comfortable lives that end with comfortable deaths. There is no shame in such choices. The world needs normal people living normal lives. But the world also needs pioneers who push boundaries, who prove that transcendence is possible, who achieve what everyone else considered impossible. If you are such a person, if you feel deep drive towards something beyond normal comprehension, then you must be willing to walk this harder path. I am Fang Yuan. I have walked alone through 5 centuries, pursuing goal most consider unattainable. The journey has been difficult beyond easy description. I have sacrificed what others consider essential. I have committed acts that earn universal condemnation. I have endured hardships that break lesser beings. And I would not trade a moment of it for all the comfortable, conventional, mediocre lives in the world combined. This path, with all its difficulties and sacrifices, is the only path worthy of who I am and what I pursue. Choose your own path consciously. If you seek conventional success and comfortable life, pursue those honestly without pretending to greater ambitions. But if you seek transcendence, if you pursue the impossible, then commit absolutely. Pay the prices, make the sacrifices, develop the capabilities, and never ever surrender. The rewards await those with sufficient will to seize them. Everything else is merely obstacle between you and your chosen destiny. This is the calculus of power cold, ruthless, effective. May you calculate correctly and act accordingly in pursuit of whatever impossible dream drives you forward into the unknown. Let me delve deeper into what separates those who achieve extraordinary goals from those who merely dream of them. The difference is not primarily talent, though talent helps. It is not primarily resources, though resources provide advantages. The fundamental difference is in how they structure their lives, their thinking, their very existence around their chosen purposes. Most people organize their lives around comfort and social acceptance. They wake each day and drift through routines established by habit and circumstance. They work at jobs chosen for security rather than purpose. They spend free time on entertainment that leaves nothing of value. They make decisions based on what feels good in the moment or what others expect. Then they wonder why decades pass with so little meaningful progress toward goals they claim to value. This is not living with purpose. This is existing by default, letting circumstances and habits dictate your path rather than consciously choosing and creating your trajectory. The result is inevitable. You end up wherever these unconscious forces take you, which is rarely anywhere you would consciously choose. I have never lived by default. From the moment of rebirth with memories of my previous life intact, every day has been organized around advancing toward eternal life. Not just major decisions, but seemingly minor choices, how I spend each hour, which skills I develop, which relationships I form, what information I pursue. Everything serves the ultimate purpose, or serves recovery and preparation between major efforts. This level of purposeful organization requires constant vigilance. Your biology, your social conditioning, your circumstances, all conspire to pull you back toward default patterns. Comfort beckons constantly. Social pressures encourage conformity. Immediate pleasures tempt you away from long-term focus. Maintaining purposeful trajectory despite these forces requires iron discipline and absolute clarity about what truly matters. Consider how most people approach skill development. They learn what they are required to learn for jobs or social roles. They develop hobbies based on what seems fun or interesting in the moment. Their skill acquisition is reactive and scattered, responding to immediate circumstances rather than serving long-term strategic purposes. My approach is entirely different. I identify what capabilities would serve my ultimate goal, then systematically acquire them regardless of whether the process is enjoyable. Some skills took decades to master. Some required enduring, tedious practice that offered no immediate satisfaction. But I pursued them because strategic analysis revealed they would eventually prove valuable. This is the difference between purposeful and purposeless skill development. Purposeless development follows interest and circumstance, creating a random collection of capabilities with no coherent pattern. Purposeful development follows strategic analysis, creating an integrated toolkit where each capability enhances others and all serve ultimate objectives. The same principle applies to relationship formation. Most people form relationships based on proximity, shared interests, emotional attraction, largely unconscious factors. Their social networks arise through circumstance rather than design. Some of these relationships prove valuable, many do not, but the process is fundamentally reactive. I form relationships strategically. Before investing time and energy in any connection, I evaluate what purpose it would serve. Does this person have resources I need? Knowledge I lack? Capabilities that complement my own? Connections to networks I wish to access? If the answer is yes, I cultivate the relationship to the degree that serves my purposes. If the answer is no, I remain cordial, but invest minimal energy. This sounds cold to those who form relationships based on emotion and compatibility, but it is simply efficient. My time and energy are finite resources. Every hour spent on relationships that don't serve my purposes is an hour not spent on relationships that do. Given that my purpose is eternal life rather than social fulfillment, prioritizing strategically valuable connections over emotionally comfortable ones is obvious choice. Some of these strategic relationships have lasted decades, providing mutual benefits across long periods. Others were brief, serving specific purposes, then dissolving when those purposes were achieved. I maintain no connection out of sentiment or habit. When a relationship stops serving useful functions, I let it fade without regret or nostalgia. This pragmatic approach to human connection is one of the hardest aspects of the demon path for most people to accept. They want to believe relationships are somehow special, exempt from the strategic calculation that governs other domains. But relationships are simply patterns of interaction between individuals. They can be evaluated by the same standards as any other resource allocation decision. Does this mean I am incapable of appreciating individuals or valuing certain people more than others? Not at all. Some people prove far more valuable as allies, more trustworthy, more capable than others. I recognize and appreciate these qualities, but my appreciation is conscious and conditional rather than unconscious and emotional. The moment someone's costs exceed their benefits, I can sever the connection without internal conflict. Now, let me address the crucial concept of momentum, for momentum is what transforms initial effort into sustained progress. Starting any significant endeavor requires enormous activation energy, overcoming inertia, establishing new patterns, making initial progress against resistance. But once momentum builds, continuation becomes progressively easier. Most people never build real momentum because they start and stop repeatedly. They work intensely for days or weeks, then take breaks, then start again from near zero momentum. Each restart requires full activation energy. They spend their entire lives pushing boulders uphill, never maintaining effort long enough to reach the point where momentum carries them forward. I understand momentum deeply. When I commit to a course of action, I maintain effort consistently until momentum builds to self-sustaining levels. No breaks out of boredom or frustration, no pauses because progress seems slow. I push through the high-resistance initial phase until the work becomes its own reward. Until patterns are so established, they require less conscious effort to maintain. This is how I have mastered countless skills and achieved objectives that seemed impossible at the start. Not through sporadic intense effort, but through consistent sustained effort that builds momentum over months and years. By the time momentum fully develops, progress accelerates dramatically. Tasks that initially required enormous willpower become almost automatic. You can apply this principle to your own pursuits. When beginning something new, commit to daily effort for at least 3 months before evaluating whether to continue. This gives momentum time to build. Many people quit in the first few weeks when resistance is highest, never reaching the point where momentum makes continuation natural. During this initial high-resistance phase, rely on discipline rather than motivation. Motivation fluctuates wildly some days. You feel driven, other days you feel nothing. Discipline means acting according to your commitments regardless of momentary feelings. Do the work whether you feel like it or not. Show up when you would rather rest. This consistency is what builds momentum. Let us examine now the relationship between pain and growth, for this relationship is fundamental to all significant achievement. Growth requires pushing beyond current limits. Pushing beyond limits means entering territory where you are inadequate, where failure is common, where the process itself is uncomfortable or painful. There is no path to transcendence that does not include substantial suffering. Most people avoid pain whenever possible. They retreat to comfort zones where they feel competent and capable. They pursue activities they are already good at rather than developing weak areas. This feels rational in the moment. Why choose discomfort when comfort is available? But the long-term result is stagnation. You become extremely capable at things you were already decent at, while weaknesses remain weaknesses. I deliberately seek discomfort because I understand its relationship to growth. When I identify a weakness or gap in my capabilities, I specifically pursue situations that expose and challenge that weakness. Yes, this is unpleasant. Yes, I fail frequently during this process. But this is the only way to transform weakness into strength. Physical cultivation provides clear examples. To increase strength, you must stress muscles beyond their current capacity. This process is painful and causes tissue damage, but the damage triggers adaptation that makes you stronger. If you only lift weights you can handle comfortably, you never grow stronger. Growth requires pushing into discomfort, into temporary failure, into pain. Mental and strategic development work identically. To develop capabilities beyond your current level, you must attempt things that exceed your current abilities. This means frequent failure, frustration, the discomfort of being inadequate. But this is the price of growth. Comfort and growth are fundamentally incompatible. You must choose one or the other. I choose growth, always and without exception. Whenever I feel comfortable, I become suspicious. Comfort means I am operating well within my capabilities, which means I am not developing new ones. So I deliberately introduce new challenges, new sources of discomfort, new opportunities for failure and growth. This is not masochism. I do not pursue pain for its own sake, but I recognize pain as a signal that I am pushing boundaries, that growth is occurring. In the U world, there is a saying, refinement produces results. The process of refinement is inherently painful. Impurities must be burned away. Structures must be broken down and rebuilt. But the result is something purer and stronger than the original. Your own development follows this pattern. To become something greater than you currently are, your current self must, in some sense, be destroyed and rebuilt. This process is never comfortable, but it is necessary. The only question is whether you will embrace this necessity or spend your life avoiding the discomfort that genuine growth requires. Let me speak now of the concept of anti-fragility, a term that captures something I have understood intuitively for centuries. Most systems are fragile. Stress and chaos damage them. Some systems are robust. They resist damage from stress and chaos. But certain rare systems are anti-fragile. They actually grow stronger from stress and chaos, thriving in precisely the conditions that destroy fragile systems. I have deliberately cultivated anti-fragility in my approach to cultivation and existence. Setbacks that would destroy fragile cultivators make me stronger. Betrayals that would break those dependent on trust teach me to rely only on myself. Failures that would discourage those measuring success by continuous progress teach me what doesn't work, making eventual success more likely. This anti-fragility comes from specific structural features. First, I never stake everything on single approaches. When one method fails, I have others already in development. Second, I extract maximum learning from every failure, ensuring each setback provides value even if not success. Third, I maintain flexibility to adapt to changing circumstances rather than being committed to rigid plans. Most importantly, my sense of self and purpose is not tied to specific outcomes. Failures do not threaten my identity because I do not define myself by results, but by commitment to ultimate purpose. As long as I am pursuing eternal life with absolute dedication, I am succeeding at being who I choose to be, regardless of specific outcomes along the way. This psychological structure makes me extremely difficult to break. Opponents who defeat me in specific encounters have not defeated me in any meaningful sense. They have merely taught me something about my current limitations and their capabilities. I adapt, I adjust, I return stronger. The defeat itself becomes resource I use to eventually achieve victory. You can cultivate similar anti-fragility by structuring your approach correctly. Never depend on single methods or resources. Maintain multiple paths toward your goals. Extract learning systematically from failures rather than simply feeling bad about them. Define success by commitment and effort rather than specific outcomes. Maintain flexibility to adapt when circumstances change. Over time, as you implement these structural features, you will notice a shift. Setbacks stop feeling like disasters and start feeling like information. Failures stop threatening your identity and start improving your capabilities. Chaos stops overwhelming you and starts presenting opportunities. You become anti-fragile, strengthened by the very forces that weaken others. Now let me address a question that arises regarding the path I advocate. Does this approach lead to a life worth living? If you sacrifice relationships, comfort, conventional morality, all in pursuit of some distant goal, what quality of life remains during the journey? This question reveals assumptions about what makes life worth living. Most people assume satisfaction comes from comfort, from relationships, from social approval, from experiencing pleasures. For them, a life lacking these elements would indeed feel empty and meaningless. But some individuals are constitutionally different. We do not measure life quality by comfort or social connection, but by progress toward chosen purposes. The journey itself toward extraordinary goals provides satisfaction far deeper than any comfort or relationship. Overcoming obstacles others consider insurmountable generates, meaning that social validation cannot match. For 500 years, I have lived without most of what others consider essential to meaningful existence. No lasting relationships based on mutual affection. No comfortable home I am attached to. No reputation I care to maintain. No community I belong to beyond strategic calculation. By conventional standards, my existence should feel empty and lonely, yet I experience profound satisfaction. Each obstacle overcome, each strategic victory, each increment of progress toward eternal life provides meaning and fulfillment. The challenge itself is the point. The becoming rather than the arriving, the continuous transformation of self towards something capable of achieving the impossible. This is not a life for everyone, nor should it be. Most people would be genuinely miserable living this way. They need connection and comfort and conventional sources of meaning. But for those rare individuals driven by transcendent ambition, this path offers something far more valuable than happiness. It offers purpose, challenge continuous growth toward extraordinary goals. So when evaluating whether to walk this path, do not ask whether it will make you happy in conventional sense. Ask whether it will make you the kind of person you wish to become. Ask whether pursuing goals others consider impossible provides more meaning than pursuing conventional success. Ask whether the journey itself, with all its difficulty, calls to something deep within you. If the answer is yes, if you feel resonance with this approach despite its costs, then you may be one of those rare individuals for whom this path is appropriate. Not better or worse than other paths, but appropriate for who you are and what drives you. I am Fang Yuan. I have walked this path for 5 centuries and will walk it for 5 more if necessary. The journey has been difficult beyond easy description, but it has been my journey, chosen consciously and pursued with absolute commitment. Whatever path you choose, choose it consciously. Commit to it absolutely. Accept its costs without complaint. Extract every possible lesson and advantage from it. And above all, refuse to live by default, drifting wherever circumstances and habits take you. Your life is finite. Your time is limited. Every day you spend living unconsciously is a day lost forever. Wake up, choose your purpose, organize everything around it, and pursue it with the totality that extraordinary achievement demands. This is the architecture of ambition's systematic, purposeful, uncompromising. Build it correctly and no goal remains truly impossible. Build it poorly or not at all, and even moderate achievements may elude you. The choice, as always, is yours. Choose wisely, choose consciously, and having chosen, commit absolutely to seeing your choice through to its conclusion, whatever that may be.